The envelope sat on the dining table like a trap. I pressed it flat with my palm. The glue caught. It held. This was the will my mother had signed 3 years ago. The one Derek and Vanessa had helped her write. The one that left me nothing. I was supposed to be grateful. I was supposed to sign. 3 weeks earlier, the front door opened without a knock. Vanessa walked in first. Her heels snapped on the hardwood. Anger already dressed her face. Behind her came Derek, tall, steady, using that voice he saved for juries. He said Georgia courts were very reasonable. He said adult children could protect aging parents from bad financial decisions. The words came slow, careful, like he had rehearsed them in the car. Vanessa stood beside him, arms folded. She did not look at me. She looked at the brown leather briefcase on the table. The one that held my father's legacy. 30 years of power of attorney work. Durable, organized, built to last. I listened. I did not interrupt. I saw the furious woman in front of me. The girl whose hair I had braided before school. The teenager who cried when a boy broke her heart. Now her mouth moved. Now her words came sharp. She said I ruined things once. I did not argue. Instead, I opened the side drawer. I placed a file on the table. The paper made a soft sound when it touched the wood. I told them this was the will they had never bothered to read. I did not raise my voice. I did not let them open it. I said there were things in life that could not be shouted out of someone's hands. Then I put it back in the drawer. I closed it. I let the silence sit. Peace takes time. Peace requires planning. Revenge does too. 30 years earlier, the same house had smelled different then. Salt hung in the air. Fresh beams. Possibility. I had been a high school history teacher. I married Robert Cole, a contractor everyone in Savannah trusted. Robert built Harbor House because he wanted his family to see the water. First thing in the morning, Margaret kept the books. She kept the lesson plans. She kept him alive when the chest pains started. The doctors told Robert to sell off some projects. They told him to rest. I repeated their advice at the kitchen table. Not to control him, but because I wanted him breathing. Robert refused. He kept working. He kept working until the night he leaned over his dinner. His hand clutched his chest. His eyes found mine. I held his hand while we waited for the ambulance. The paramedics came. They worked fast. They did not speak. Robert died on the way to the hospital. 2 months later, the debts came in envelopes. Thin ones, white ones. Each one held a number. The subcontractors wanted their money. The suppliers wanted theirs. I sold the truck first. Then the tools. Then the equipment Robert had stored in the garage. It was not enough. The house had equity. The house could cover everything. But I did not sell it. I went to the bank instead. I asked for a meeting. I brought the files Robert had kept in his office. I showed them the contracts. I showed them the payment schedules. I showed them the work Robert had already completed. The loan officer looked at the papers. He looked at me. He said the bank did not usually lend to widows. I said Robert had been their client for 15 years. I said I had been a teacher for 12. I said I knew how to finish what he started. He approved the loan. 6 months later, I finished the last project Robert had signed. The client paid in full. I paid the bank. I paid the subcontractors. I kept the house. Vanessa was 7. Derek was 5. They did not remember their father's funeral. They remembered the new playground I built in the backyard. I told them their father had loved them. I told them he had worked hard so they could have a good life. I did not tell them about the debts. I did not tell them about the nights. I sat at the kitchen table with a calculator. They grew up believing things had always been stable. 15 years later, Vanessa graduated from college. Derek went to law school. I worked as a substitute teacher. I did power of attorney work on the side. The work was steady. The clients were grateful. I helped them organize their estates. I helped them plan for the future. I charged fair rates. I kept careful records. By the time I turned 60, I had saved enough to retire. The house was paid off. The bills were current. I had done what Robert could not. 3 weeks ago, Vanessa's heels stopped snapping. Derek's voice went quiet. They stared at the closed drawer. I did not open it again. I told them they could leave. They left. The envelope stayed on the table. I pressed it flat one more time. Then I placed it in the drawer with the will they had never read. The glue had dried. The envelope would not open easily now. That was fine. Some things were not meant to be opened. Some things were meant to stay sealed. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The phone rang at 7 in the morning. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. Vanessa's voice came through sharp. She said we needed to talk about Mother's assets. She did not say hello. She did not ask how I slept. She said Derek had reviewed the estate documents. She said there were irregularities. The word hung in the air like an accusation. I asked what irregularities she meant. She said I had been managing Mother's finances for years. She said there was no oversight. She said the family deserved transparency. The coffee maker beeped behind me. Steam rose from the pot. I told her Mother had asked me to handle her accounts. I told her everything was documented. Vanessa said documentation was not the same as approval. She said she and Derek had decided to request a formal audit. The line went quiet for a moment. I heard papers rustling on her end. Derek was there. He was listening. I said an audit was their right. I said I had nothing to hide. Vanessa's tone shifted. She said they were not accusing me of anything. She said they just wanted to make sure Mother was protected. I did not respond. She filled the silence. She said they would be hiring someone independent. Someone who specialized in elder financial abuse cases. The words landed like stones. I thanked her for calling. I hung up. The coffee sat in the pot. I did not pour it. Outside the window a cardinal landed on the fence. Red against gray wood. It stayed for 3 seconds. Then it flew away. 2 days later, the auditor arrived in a silver sedan. Her name was Patricia Green. She wore a navy suit. She carried a leather portfolio. She shook my hand at the door. Her grip was firm, professional. She said this was standard procedure. She said families often requested reviews when multiple generations were involved. I showed her to the dining room. I had already prepared the files. Bank statements going back 5 years. Receipts for medical expenses. Records of bill payments. Copies of the power of attorney documents Mother had signed. Patricia sat down. She opened her portfolio. She pulled out a legal pad. She asked how long I had been managing Mother's finances. I told her 8 years. Since Mother's stroke. She asked if anyone else had access to the accounts. I said no. Mother had requested that only I handle her affairs. Patricia wrote something down. Her pen made small scratching sounds. She asked if I had ever transferred money from Mother's accounts to my own. I said yes. For reimbursements. For expenses I paid on Mother's behalf. She asked if I had documentation for those transfers. I slid a folder across the table. Every receipt, every invoice, every check. Patricia opened the folder. She read slowly. Her expression did not change. The clock on the wall ticked. The sound filled the room. She asked if Mother had ever questioned any of the transactions. I said no. Mother trusted me. Patricia looked up. She asked if I had that in writing. I did not answer right away. The air felt heavy, too warm. I told her Mother had dementia now. She told her memory came and went. I told her there were good days and bad days. Patricia nodded. She wrote something else down. She said she would need to interview Mother directly. She said it was standard protocol. I told her Mother was at Magnolia Gardens. I told her visiting hours were from 10 to 4. Patricia said she would go tomorrow. She closed her portfolio. She stood up. She thanked me for my time. I walked her to the door. She got in her silver sedan. She drove away. The cardinal returned to the fence. This time it stayed longer. That night, I called the nursing home. I asked to speak with the head nurse. Her name was Linda. She had been there for 12 years. I told her someone would be coming to interview Mother. I told her it was about the estate. Linda's voice softened. She said Mother had been having more bad days lately. She said sometimes Mother did not recognize her own children. I asked if Mother had been asking for me. Linda paused. She said Mother asked for Robert sometimes. She said Mother thought he was still alive. The line went quiet. I thanked Linda. I told her I would visit soon. She said Mother would like that. The next morning, I drove to Magnolia Gardens. The building sat behind tall pines. White brick, black shutters, a fountain in the circular drive. Inside, the air smelled like lavender and disinfectant. I signed in at the desk. The receptionist smiled. She knew my name. Mother's room was on the second floor. End of the hall. Window facing the garden. I knocked twice before I entered. Mother sat in her chair by the window. Sunlight fell across her lap. She looked up when I came in. Her eyes found mine. She said my name, Margaret. Relief washed through me. I sat in the chair beside her. I took her hand. She asked if Robert was coming. She said he had promised to take her to see the water. I told her Robert was resting. I told her he sent his love. Mother nodded. She looked out the window again. The garden below held roses. Red ones, white ones, pink ones climbing a trellis. Mother said the roses were beautiful. She said Robert had planted roses at Harbor House. I agreed. I did not correct her. We sat together in the sunlight. Her hand stayed in mine. A knock came at the door. Patricia Green stepped inside. Navy suit, leather portfolio. She introduced herself to Mother. She said she had some questions. Mother looked confused. She looked at me. I told her it was fine. I told her Patricia just wanted to talk. Patricia pulled a chair closer. She opened her portfolio. She asked Mother if she knew who managed her money. Mother's face went blank. She looked at Patricia, then at me, then at the window. She said Robert took care of everything. She said he always had. Patricia wrote something down. She asked Mother if she trusted me. Mother smiled. She said I was a good girl. She said I had always been responsible. Patricia asked if I had ever taken money without asking. Mother's smile faded. She looked confused again. She asked when lunch was served. Patricia closed her portfolio. She stood up. She thanked Mother for her time. She left the room. I stayed. Mother's hand tightened around mine. She asked if she had said something wrong. I told her no. I told her she had been perfect. The roses swayed in the garden below. The cardinal did not come. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Patricia's report arrived on a Thursday. The envelope was thick, official. It carried the weight of judgment. I opened it at the kitchen table. The same table where Robert used to review his contracts. The letter inside was 3 pages long. Single-spaced. Legal terminology wrapped around simple accusations. Patricia had found inconsistencies. She had found gaps in documentation. She had found what she called patterns of concern. The words were careful. They did not say theft. They did not say fraud. They said further investigation was recommended. I read it twice. Then I folded it back into the envelope. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. I had forgotten to drink it. Outside the window the sky had turned gray. Rain was coming. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Derek. He said they needed to meet. He said it was urgent. He said tomorrow at 10. I did not reply. The rain started an hour later. Soft at first, then harder. Water ran down the window pane in crooked lines. The next morning, Derek arrived alone. His car pulled into the driveway at 9:55. Always punctual, always prepared. He knocked twice. I let him in. He wore a gray suit. No tie. His briefcase was black leather. Expensive. He sat at the dining table without being invited. He placed the briefcase beside him. He said Patricia's findings were troubling. He said the family had concerns about my management of Mother's estate. I asked what specific concerns he meant. Derek opened his briefcase. He pulled out a copy of Patricia's report. He also pulled out a second document. He said they had consulted with an attorney. He said the attorney recommended seeking guardianship over Mother. The word hung between us. Guardianship meant control. It meant removing my power of attorney. It meant treating me like a criminal. I asked who would be appointed guardian. Derek said he and Vanessa would share the responsibility. He said it was the most logical arrangement. The rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds. It fell across the table in sharp angles. I told Derek that Mother had chosen me. I told him she had signed the documents when her mind was clear. Derek said that was 8 years ago. He said circumstances had changed. He said Mother could no longer advocate for herself. He slid the second document across the table. A petition for guardianship. Already prepared. Already signed by him and Vanessa. All it needed was filing. I asked if they had told Mother about this. Derek's jaw tightened. He said Mother would not understand. He said her dementia made her incompetent to make decisions. I looked at the petition. The legal language was dense. Clinical. It described Mother as incapacitated, vulnerable, in need of protection from exploitation. It did not mention my 30 years of caring for this family. Derek said they were not trying to hurt me. He said they were trying to protect Mother. I asked what they thought they were protecting her from. Derek closed his briefcase. He stood up. He said I could contest the petition if I wanted. He said it would go to court. He said it would be expensive. He said it would also be public. The threat was quiet, but clear. I did not stand. I stayed in my chair. I told Derek he could file whatever he wanted. I told him I would not make it easy. He picked up his briefcase. He walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back. He said this did not have to be ugly. He said I could resign the power of attorney voluntarily. He said they would make sure I was compensated for my time. I did not respond. Derek left. His car backed out of the driveway. The engine sound faded down the street. The sunlight moved across the table. It touched the petition, made the paper glow. I picked up the document. I read it again. Then I placed it in the drawer with the envelope from 3 weeks ago. Some things needed to stay together. That afternoon, I drove to my attorney's office. His name was Howard Marsh. He had handled Robert's estate after the funeral. Howard was 70 now, mostly retired, but he still took calls from old clients. His office was above a pharmacy on Bull Street. Wooden stairs, a brass nameplate by the door. Howard's secretary was gone. He answered the door himself. He looked older than I remembered. Thinner, gray hair combed back. He smiled when he saw me. He said it had been too long. We sat in his office. The walls were lined with law books. The desk was oak, heavy. I handed him Patricia's report and the guardianship petition. Howard put on his reading glasses. He read slowly. His expression did not change. When he finished, he set the papers down. He removed his glasses. He asked if I had kept records of everything I had done for Mother. I said yes. Every transaction, every decision, every medical appointment. Howard nodded. He said that was good. He said it would matter. He asked if I wanted to fight the petition. I told him yes. Howard leaned back in his chair. It creaked under his weight. He said guardianship cases were hard. He said judges tended to favor family consensus. He said if Derek and Vanessa presented a united front, it would be difficult to win. I asked what my chances were. Howard was quiet for a moment. He looked out the window. The pharmacy sign blinked below. He said it depended on Mother. He said if she could testify on my behalf it would help. But he also said her dementia would be a problem. He said opposing counsel would argue she was not competent. I asked how long the process would take. Howard said 6 months, maybe longer. He said courts moved slowly. He said it would cost money. Legal fees, expert witnesses, court costs. He asked if I was prepared for that. I told him I was. Howard picked up the petition again. He studied it. He said there was something else. Something that bothered him. He pointed to a line near the bottom. A clause about interim measures. It said that pending the guardianship hearing, Derek and Vanessa were requesting temporary control of Mother's accounts. Howard said if the judge granted that I would lose access immediately. I would not be able to pay for Mother's care. I would not be able to manage her bills. I would be frozen out before the fight even started. The light outside was fading. Shadows filled the office. Howard said he would file a response. He said he would request a hearing as soon as possible. He said we needed to move fast. I thanked him. I stood to leave. Howard walked me to the door. He put a hand on my shoulder. He said Robert would be proud of me. The words surprised me. I had not expected them. I thanked him again. The stairs creaked as I walked down. The pharmacy was closing. The lights were going off one by one. Outside the air smelled like rain. The clouds had returned. I got in my car. I sat for a moment before starting the engine. The cardinal was not there. But the roses in the garden at Magnolia Gardens would still be blooming. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The hearing was scheduled for Tuesday morning. Howard called on Monday afternoon to tell me. His voice sounded tired. He said the judge had agreed to an emergency hearing. He said we would argue against the temporary control request. He said to dress conservatively. He said to bring all my documentation. He said Derek would have an attorney. Probably someone expensive. The call ended. The house felt too quiet. I laid my clothes out that night. Navy dress. Pearl earrings. The ones Robert had given me for our 20th anniversary. Sleep did not come easily. The ceiling fan turned in slow circles above the bed. At 3 in the morning I got up. I made tea. I sat at the kitchen table. The files were already organized. Bank statements. Medical records. Receipts going back 8 years. Everything I had done for Mother was documented there. But documentation was not the same as trust. The tea grew cold in the cup. Dawn light crept through the window. The cardinal landed on the fence at 6. It stayed for less than a minute. Tuesday morning. The courthouse was downtown. Red brick. White columns. Built in 1873. I arrived at 8:30. Howard was waiting on the steps. He wore a dark suit. His briefcase looked heavier than before. He asked if I was ready. I told him yes. We walked inside together. The lobby smelled like old wood and floor polish. Security checked my purse. The metal detector beeped. My keys. The courtroom was on the 3rd floor. Double doors. High ceilings. Rows of wooden benches. Derek was already there. He sat at the front with his attorney. The attorney was younger than Howard. Sharper suit. Leather portfolio instead of a briefcase. Vanessa sat in the gallery behind them. She did not look at me. Howard and I took our seats at the opposite table. The wood was scarred. Someone had carved initials into the corner. J. W. and R. B. A bailiff entered from the side door. He told everyone to rise. Judge Carol Henderson came in. Black robe. Gray hair pulled back. Reading glasses on a chain. She sat behind the bench. The gavel came down once. The sound echoed. Judge Henderson looked at the papers in front of her. She read for a full minute. Then she looked up. She asked Derek's attorney to present his case. The attorney stood. His name was Michael Brennan. He introduced himself. His voice was smooth, practiced. He said the Cole family was concerned about their grandmother's welfare. He said Margaret Cole had been managing substantial assets without oversight. He said an independent audit had revealed inconsistencies. He said those inconsistencies raised questions about financial exploitation. He said the family was not making accusations. They simply wanted transparency. He said temporary control would ensure Mother's assets were protected during the guardianship proceeding. Judge Henderson listened without interrupting. Her face showed nothing. Brennan sat down. The chair made a soft sound. Judge Henderson looked at Howard. She asked for our response. Howard stood slowly. He placed both hands on the table. He said I had served as Mother's power of attorney for 8 years. He said I had never received a single complaint during that time. He said every transaction had been documented. Every decision had been made in Mother's best interest. He said Patricia Green's audit had found no evidence of theft. No evidence of fraud. He said the family's request was not about protection. It was about control. Howard sat down. The courtroom was silent. Someone coughed in the gallery. Judge Henderson removed her reading glasses. She looked at Derek. She asked him to approach the bench. Derek stood. He walked forward. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Judge Henderson asked why he was seeking guardianship now. After 8 years, Derek said Mother's condition had deteriorated. He said her dementia had progressed. He said the family had only recently become aware of the financial irregularities. Judge Henderson asked what irregularities he meant. Derek hesitated. He glanced back at Brennan. He said there were transfers from Mother's account to mine. He said some of those transfers were large. Judge Henderson asked if those transfers were documented. Derek said yes. But he said documentation alone did not prove the transfers were legitimate. Judge Henderson put her glasses back on. She looked at the papers again. She asked if I was present. Howard said yes. Judge Henderson told me to stand. I stood. My hands stayed at my sides. Judge Henderson asked if I had transferred money from Mother's account to my own. I said yes. For reimbursements. For expenses I paid on her behalf. Judge Henderson asked if I had receipts. I said yes. Howard had submitted them with our response. Judge Henderson flipped through the file. She found the receipts. She read several. She asked if Mother had ever objected to any transaction. I said no, not while she was competent. Judge Henderson asked about now. She asked if Mother understood what was happening. I told her the truth. I said Mother's memory was unreliable. I said some days she knew me. Some days she did not. Judge Henderson nodded. She made a note. She asked Derek if he had visited his grandmother recently. Derek said yes, last month. Judge Henderson asked how often he visited. Derek paused. He said once every few months. He lived 2 hours away. Judge Henderson asked how often I visited. I said twice a week. Sometimes more. Judge Henderson made another note. She set down her pen. She said she was not prepared to grant temporary control. She said the evidence did not support immediate action. She said the guardianship petition would proceed. She said a full hearing would be scheduled within 90 days. She said until then I would retain power of attorney. She said I was to continue managing Mother's affairs. But she also said I was to provide monthly accountings to Derek and Vanessa. She said transparency would be required. The gavel came down again. Judge Henderson stood. She left through the side door. The courtroom stirred. People began to gather their things. Derek turned to look at me. His face was tight, controlled. Vanessa stood. She walked out without speaking. Brennan closed his portfolio. He shook Derek's hand. He left. Howard touched my arm. He said we had won the first round. But his voice held no celebration. Outside the courthouse the sun was bright. Too bright after the dim courtroom. Howard said he would prepare the monthly accounting forms. He said to keep every receipt. He said the next hearing would be harder. I thanked him. He walked toward his car. I stood on the steps for a moment. Traffic moved past on Abercorn Street. The Cardinal was not there. But somewhere in Savannah the roses at Magnolia Gardens were still blooming. And Mother was still asking for Robert. I got in my car. I drove north toward the nursing home. The accounting could wait. Mother could not. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Mother was sitting by the window when I arrived. The afternoon light fell across her lap. Soft. Golden. She did not turn when I entered. Her eyes stayed fixed on the garden below. I pulled a chair beside her. I sat down quietly. The roses had bloomed fuller since my last visit. Pink ones climbed the trellis now. Mother spoke without looking at me. She said the roses reminded her of something. I asked what they reminded her of. She said she could not remember. But the feeling was there. Warm. Safe. Her hand rested on the armrest. I placed mine over it. She turned then. Her eyes found mine. Recognition flickered. She said my name. Margaret. Relief moved through me like water. I told her I had been to court that morning. I told her everything was fine. Mother's brow furrowed. She asked what court. I said it was nothing important. Just paperwork. Mother nodded slowly. She looked back at the garden. She asked if Derek had come to see the roses. I told her not yet. But maybe soon. Mother said Derek was always busy. She said he worked too hard. Just like his father. The comparison stung. But I did not correct her. A nurse entered the room. Her name was Carol. She carried a small paper cup with pills. Carol smiled at Mother. She said it was time for medication. Mother took the pills without complaint. She swallowed them with water from a plastic cup. Carol checked the chart at the foot of the bed. She made a note. She asked if Mother had eaten lunch. Mother said she could not remember. Carol said that was all right. She said lunch had been chicken and rice. She said Mother had eaten most of it. Carol left. Her shoes squeaked softly in the hallway. Mother turned back to me. She asked if I remembered the chicken Robert used to make. I said yes. With lemon and herbs. Mother smiled. She said it was the best chicken she had ever tasted. We sat together for another hour. Sometimes Mother spoke. Sometimes she did not. The light shifted as the sun moved lower. Shadows stretched across the floor. Mother's eyes began to close. Her breathing slowed. I stayed until she fell asleep. Then I stood. I kissed her forehead. I left the room quietly. Linda was at the nurse's station. She looked up when I approached. I asked how Mother had been this week. Linda's expression changed. She said Mother had been asking for Robert more often. She said yesterday Mother had become agitated. She said Mother had insisted Robert was late. That he was supposed to pick her up. Linda said they had to give her something to calm her down. I asked if this was happening often. Linda said yes, more than before. She said the doctor had suggested adjusting Mother's medication. She said it might help with the confusion. I told her to do what was necessary. Linda said she would. She said she would call me if anything changed. I thanked her. I walked toward the elevator. The building felt heavier than before. The lavender smell seemed stronger. Outside the sky had turned orange. The sun was setting behind the pines. My phone buzzed as I reached the car. A text from Vanessa. She said we needed to talk. She said it was about Mother's care. She said Magnolia Gardens was expensive. She said there were other options. The words felt cold, clinical. I did not reply. 2 days later, Vanessa called at noon. Her voice was steady, controlled. She said she had been researching other facilities. She said there was a place called Riverside Manor. She said it was 20 miles south. She said it cost half as much as Magnolia Gardens. I asked if she had visited Riverside Manor. Vanessa said no, but she had read the reviews online. She said they were acceptable. I told her Mother was settled at Magnolia Gardens. I told her the staff knew Mother. I told her moving would be traumatic. Vanessa said trauma was temporary. She said financial responsibility was permanent. She said Mother's assets were being depleted too quickly. She said at the current rate the money would run out in 5 years. I asked what she suggested. Vanessa said moving Mother to a less expensive facility would extend the funds. She said it would also free up resources for other family needs. The phrase hung in the air. Other family needs. I asked what other family needs she meant. Vanessa's tone sharpened. She said Derek had law school loans. She said her daughter needed braces. She said the family had expenses too. I told her Mother's money was for Mother's care. Vanessa said that was my interpretation. She said once the guardianship was granted things would be different. She said Derek had already contacted Riverside Manor. She said they had availability. She said this was going to happen. With or without my cooperation. The line went dead. I set the phone down. My hands were shaking. The kitchen felt too small. The air too thick. I walked outside. The backyard stretched behind the house. The grass needed mowing. Robert had built a bench beneath the oak tree. He had carved our initials into the back. I sat down. The wood was warm from the sun. Birds moved through the branches above. Sparrows. Finches. No cardinal. The wind shifted. Cooler now. I thought about Mother in her room at Magnolia Gardens. Looking at roses. Asking for Robert. I thought about Riverside Manor. A place I had never seen. A place chosen from online reviews. I thought about Vanessa's voice. Clinical. Cold. Talking about expenses and resources. As if Mother were a budget line. Not a person. The sun moved behind a cloud. The yard darkened. I stood up. I walked back inside. The filing cabinet in the study held documents I had not opened in years. I pulled the bottom drawer. Old papers. Yellowed folders. I found what I was looking for at the back. Robert's life insurance policy. The one he had taken out before he died. The beneficiary was listed as the estate. But there was a second document. Stapled behind it. A letter. In Robert's handwriting. It was dated 2 weeks before his death. The letter said if anything happened to him the insurance money should go to Mother's care. He had written it out clearly. Witnessed by 2 people. Signed and dated. It was not a legal trust. But it was evidence of intent. I made a copy. I placed the original back in the drawer. The copy went into my purse. Howard needed to see this. The guardianship hearing was 8 weeks away. 8 weeks to prepare. 8 weeks to make sure Mother stayed where she belonged. The cardinal landed on the fence as I locked the back door. It stayed longer this time. Long enough for me to watch it. Long enough for me to remember that some things do not leave. They just wait for the right moment to return. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Howard's office was quiet on Friday afternoon. The secretary's desk sat empty. She only worked mornings now. I climbed the wooden stairs. My footsteps echoed in the stairwell. Howard answered the door. He looked surprised to see me without an appointment. I told him I had found something. I handed him Robert's letter. Howard read it standing by the window. Light fell across the page. His expression changed as he read. He looked up when he finished. He asked where I had found this. I told him it had been in Robert's files. With the insurance policy. Howard read it again. More slowly this time. He said the letter showed clear intent. He said it demonstrated Robert wanted Mother cared for properly. He asked if Derek and Vanessa knew about it. I said no. They had never asked about Robert's wishes. Howard sat down at his desk. He placed the letter carefully on the blotter. He said this could help. He said it showed a pattern of family commitment to quality care. He said it undermined their argument about financial irresponsibility. But he also said it was not a legal document. It would not override the guardianship petition. I asked what it would do. Howard leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. He said it would make the judge think twice. He said it would raise questions about Derek and Vanessa's motives. He said we should present it at the hearing. I agreed. Howard made a copy. He placed the original in a manila folder with my name on it. He said he would start preparing our defense. He said the hearing was 6 weeks away now. He said we needed witnesses. People who could testify about my care for Mother. I thought about Linda at Magnolia Gardens. I thought about the nurses. The staff who saw me twice a week. Howard said he would contact them. He said we needed written statements at minimum. He asked if there was anyone else. Anyone who had known the family for years. I mentioned Father Tom at St. John's. He had known us since the children were small. Howard wrote down the name. He said he would reach out. The meeting ended. I walked back down the stairs. Outside the pharmacy was busy. Friday afternoon crowd picking up prescriptions. The air smelled like rain again. Dark clouds gathered to the south. My phone rang as I reached the car. Unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice came through. Professional. Clipped. She said her name was Jennifer Park. She said she was calling from Riverside Manor. She said Derek Cole had contacted them about a potential resident. She said they had availability in their memory care unit. She asked if I would like to schedule a tour. My hands tightened on the phone. I asked who had authorized this call. Jennifer said Derek had provided my number. She said he indicated I was the primary contact for his grandmother's care. I told her there would be no tour. I told her mother was not moving. Jennifer's tone shifted. She said she understood this was difficult. She said transitions were always hard for families. I told her there would be no transition. I hung up. The rain started before I could get in the car. Cold drops. Heavy. I sat in the driver's seat. Water ran down the windshield. Derek was moving forward. He was not waiting for the hearing. He was making arrangements. Building momentum. The rain drummed on the roof. Steady. Relentless. That evening, I called Derek. He answered on the third ring. His voice was casual, as if nothing had happened. I asked why Riverside Manor had called me. Derek paused. Then he said he was exploring options. He said it was prudent planning. I told him mother was not moving. Derek's tone hardened. He said that was not my decision to make. Not anymore. He said the hearing was a formality. He said the judge would grant guardianship. He said everyone could see I was overwhelmed. I asked what made him think I was overwhelmed. Derek said I was 72 years old. He said I was managing complex financial affairs. He said the stress was evident. I told him I had managed complex affairs my entire adult life. Derek said that was before. He said things were different now. He said I should accept reality. He said fighting would only make things harder. He said if I cooperated the transition could be smooth. He said they would make sure I was taken care of. The words sounded rehearsed, like something Brennan had told him to say. I asked what taking care of me meant. Derek said they could arrange a stipend, monthly payments for my past service. He said it would be generous. He said I would not have to worry about money. The offer hung between us. I asked if this stipend was conditional. Derek said it required my resignation as power of attorney. It required my support for the guardianship. It required my silence. I told Derek I was not interested. He said I was being stubborn. He said I was making this personal when it was not. I told him it had always been personal. Derek said he would see me at the hearing. The line went dead. I set the phone down. The house felt colder. Outside the rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking apart. Stars appeared in the gaps. Small points of light. I thought about Derek's offer. A stipend. Security. An easy way out. I thought about mother asking for Robert. Looking at roses. Believing he would come. I thought about Vanessa's voice talking about expenses and resources. I thought about Robert's letter. His handwriting. His clear intent. Some things could not be bought. Some things could not be negotiated. The next morning, I drove to St. John's. The church sat on the corner of Madison and Bull. White columns. Red door. Saturday morning mass had ended. A few people lingered on the steps. I found Father Tom in the sacristy. He was putting away vestments. He smiled when he saw me. He said it had been too long. I told him I needed his help. Father Tom's expression grew serious. He closed the cabinet. He gestured toward the chairs by the window. We sat. Morning light filtered through stained glass. Blues and reds. I told him about the guardianship petition. I told him about Derek and Vanessa. I told him about Riverside Manor. Father Tom listened without interrupting. His hands rested in his lap. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he asked what I needed from him. I said I needed him to testify. I needed him to tell the court what kind of family we had been. I needed him to tell them about Robert. About the promises we had made. Father Tom nodded slowly. He said he would testify. He said he remembered Robert well. He said he remembered the funeral. He said he also remembered the years after. The way I had held the family together. He said some people broke under pressure. But some people became stronger. He said he had always known which kind I was. The words settled something in me. Something that had been loose. I thanked him. Father Tom walked me to the door. The church was empty now. Quiet. He said he would pray for Mother. And for me. The red door closed behind me. The steps were warm in the sunlight. The cardinal was perched on the fence across the street. It watched me. It did not fly away. I stood there for a long moment. Then I got in my car and drove home. 5 weeks until the hearing. 5 weeks to gather strength. 5 weeks to remember who I was. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The weeks passed like water through cupped hands. Each day I visited Mother. Each day I documented everything. The time I arrived. The time I left. What Mother said. What she remembered. Howard had told me to keep a journal. He said it would matter in court. The journal sat on my kitchen table. Black leather cover. Pages filling with careful notes. October 15th. Mother recognized me. Asked about the roses. October 18th. Mother thought I was her sister. Called me Eleanor. October 22nd. Mother asked when Robert was coming home. The entries grew. The pages turned. Linda called on a Tuesday morning. Her voice sounded strained. She said Mother had fallen during the night. She said Mother had been trying to leave her room. She said Mother kept saying Robert was waiting for her in the garden. I asked if Mother was hurt. Linda said no, just bruised. But the staff was concerned. She said they might need to move Mother to a room closer to the nurse's station. I told her to do what was necessary. Linda said she would. She said the doctor wanted to increase Mother's medication again. The call ended. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. Outside the window leaves were falling. Yellow and brown. The oak tree was shedding. I drove to Magnolia Gardens that afternoon. Mother's room had been moved. Second floor. Middle of the hall. Closer to the nurse's station. The window faced the parking lot now. No garden view. Mother sat in a wheelchair. Her hands rested in her lap. She looked smaller than before. Thinner. I pulled a chair beside her. I took her hand. She looked at me. Her eyes were clouded. Distant. She asked if I knew where Robert was. I told her Robert was resting. I told her he would come when he could. Mother's face crumpled. She said Robert never rested. She said something must be wrong. Her grip tightened on my hand. Her voice rose. She said she needed to find him. She said he was waiting for her. A nurse came in. Not Linda. Someone younger. Her name tag said Jessica. Jessica said Mother needed to calm down. She said getting upset was not good for her. She pulled a small paper cup from her pocket. 2 pills inside. Mother refused them. She turned her head away. Jessica's voice stayed gentle. She said the pills would help Mother feel better. Mother said she did not want to feel better. She wanted to find Robert. Jessica looked at me. Her eyes asked for help. I told Mother to take the pills. I told her Robert would want her to rest. Mother looked at me. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition maybe. Or betrayal. She took the pills. Jessica left. The door closed softly. Mother's hand went slack in mine. Her eyes began to close. I sat with her until she fell asleep. The parking lot outside was filling with cars. Visiting hours. Families arriving. I stayed until the sun began to set. 3 weeks later, Howard called on a Monday afternoon. He said Brennan had filed additional documents. He said they had gathered witness statements. He said Derek and Vanessa had people who would testify on their behalf. I asked who. Howard said Patricia Green would testify about the audit findings. He said a financial expert would testify about asset management. He said Derek's colleague would testify about my age. About cognitive decline in elderly caregivers. The words hit like stones. Howard said we had our own witnesses. Father Tom. Linda from Magnolia Gardens. 2 other nurses. He said we had Robert's letter. We had my documentation. We had 8 years of faithful service. But his voice carried doubt. I asked what our chances were. Howard was quiet for a moment. Papers rustled on his end. He said it would depend on the judge. He said Judge Henderson was fair. But she was also cautious. He said if Derek and Vanessa presented a united front it would be difficult. He said the hearing was in 1 week. The line went silent. Then Howard spoke again. He asked if I had thought about Derek's offer. The stipend. The clean exit. I told him no. Howard said he had to ask. He said it was his job to present all options. I told him I understood. But the answer was still no. Howard said he would see me in court. He said to dress conservatively. He said to stay calm no matter what was said. The call ended. The house felt too quiet. The kitchen clock ticked. Loud in the silence. I walked outside. The backyard was covered in fallen leaves. The oak tree stood bare. Branches reaching toward gray sky. Robert's bench sat beneath it. The wood had weathered. The carved initials were harder to read now. I sat down. The cold seeped through my coat. I thought about Mother in her new room. Asking for Robert. Being given pills to make her stop. I thought about Derek's voice on the phone. Talking about stipends and cooperation. I thought about Vanessa researching cheaper facilities. Calculating costs like Mother was a budget item. I thought about the hearing. 1 week away. The wind picked up. Leaves scattered across the grass. The cardinal had not come in days. The night before the hearing. I could not sleep. The ceiling fan turned in slow circles. Shadows moved across the walls. At 2 in the morning I got up. I made tea. I sat at the kitchen table. The journal was there. Months of entries. Months of careful documentation. I read through them. Page after page. Mother's slow decline. Her moments of clarity. Her moments of confusion. My visits. My care. My unwavering presence. It was all there. Written in my hand. Dated and detailed. But would it be enough? The tea grew cold. Dawn came slowly. Gray light filled the kitchen. Birds began to sing. I showered. I dressed in the navy dress. The pearl earrings. I looked at myself in the mirror. 72 years old. Gray hair pulled back. Lines around my eyes. I looked tired. I looked exactly like what Derek would say I was. An elderly woman. Overwhelmed. Unable to cope. But I also looked like someone else. Someone who had survived. Someone who had rebuilt. Someone who had kept promises. I picked up my purse. The journal went inside. The courthouse was downtown. I knew the way. Howard would be waiting on the steps. Derek and Vanessa would be waiting inside. Judge Henderson would be waiting behind her bench. And somewhere in a room with no garden view, Mother would be waking up. She would ask for Robert. She would be given pills. She would fall back asleep. The car started. The engine hummed. I backed out of the driveway. The house grew smaller in the mirror. The cardinal was not on the fence. But the sun was rising. And some battles had to be fought. Even when you knew the cost. Even when you knew what might be lost. I drove toward downtown. Toward the red brick courthouse. Toward whatever came next. The journal sat beside me on the passenger seat. 8 years of care. 8 years of promises kept. It would have to be enough. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The courtroom was already full when I arrived. Howard stood by our table. His briefcase sat open. Papers spread across the surface. He nodded when he saw me. His face was calm, professional. Derek and Vanessa sat across the aisle. Brennan was with them. His leather portfolio gleamed. Vanessa wore black. Her hair was pulled back tight. She did not look at me. Derek's suit was charcoal gray. Expensive. He checked his watch twice. The gallery behind them held people I did not recognize. Witnesses probably. People who would speak against me. Behind our table sat Father Tom. Linda from Magnolia Gardens. 2 nurses in their blue scrubs. They had come. They had kept their promises. The bailiff entered. He told everyone to rise. Judge Henderson came through the side door. Black robe. Reading glasses already on. She sat. The gavel came down once. Sharp. Final. Judge Henderson looked at the papers before her. She read for a long moment. Then she looked up. She asked Brennan to present his case. Brennan stood. His movements were smooth. Practiced. He said the Cole family sought guardianship out of love and concern. He said Margaret Cole had served admirably for many years. But he said those years had taken their toll. He said managing complex estates required sharp judgment. He said age and stress diminished capacity. He called Patricia Green to the stand. Patricia walked forward. She wore the same navy suit. She raised her right hand. She swore to tell the truth. Brennan asked about her audit findings. Patricia said she had found gaps in documentation. She said some transfers were inadequately explained. She said the pattern raised concerns about financial oversight. Brennan asked if she believed I was capable of managing Mother's estate. Patricia hesitated. Then she said capacity was not her expertise. But the records showed troubling inconsistencies. Howard stood for cross-examination. He asked Patricia if she had found evidence of theft. Patricia said no. Howard asked if she had found evidence of fraud. Patricia said no. Howard asked if every questioned transfer had corresponding documentation. Patricia admitted yes. But she said the documentation was sometimes incomplete. Howard thanked her. She stepped down. Brennan called his financial expert next. A man named Dr. Richard Chen. He wore wire-rimmed glasses. He carried a tablet. Dr. Chen testified about elder financial abuse. He said it often came from trusted family members. He said oversight was essential. He said mother's assets had decreased 40% over 8 years. He said better management could have preserved more. Howard cross-examined. He asked about Magnolia Gardens costs. Dr. Chen admitted quality care was expensive. Howard asked if the asset decrease was consistent with paying for premium memory care. Dr. Chen said it was possible, but he maintained that oversight would have been prudent. The morning stretched on. More witnesses. More testimony. Derek's colleague testified about caregiver burnout. About cognitive decline in elderly family members providing care. The words felt like accusations, each one landing with weight. At noon, Judge Henderson called for a lunch recess. The courtroom emptied. Howard and I stayed at our table. He said it was going as expected. He said Brennan was building a narrative. He said we would counter after lunch. I asked if we were winning. Howard did not answer right away. He organized his papers, put some in his briefcase. He said we were holding our own. But he said Brennan was effective. He said the judge was listening. We ate sandwiches in a small conference room. Father Tom joined us. He said he would testify after lunch. He said he would tell the truth. He said the truth would be enough. I wanted to believe him. 1 o'clock. The courtroom filled again. The afternoon session began. Howard called Linda to the stand. Linda wore her nursing uniform, white with small blue flowers. Her hands folded in her lap. Howard asked how long she had known me. Linda said 8 years, since mother had moved to Magnolia Gardens. Howard asked how often I visited. Linda said twice a week. Sometimes more. She said I was the most consistent family visitor she had ever seen. Howard asked about my relationship with mother. Linda's voice softened. She said I was gentle, patient. She said I sat with mother even when mother did not recognize me. She said that was love. Real love. Brennan stood for cross-examination. He asked if mother had ever expressed wishes about her care. Linda said mother's wishes changed daily. She said dementia made consistency impossible. Brennan asked if mother had ever asked to leave Magnolia Gardens. Linda paused. Then she said yes. Mother often asked to go home. Brennan asked if a less expensive facility could provide adequate care. Linda said adequate was not the same as excellent. She said mother received excellent care at Magnolia Gardens. Brennan thanked her. She stepped down. Howard called Father Tom next. Father Tom moved slowly to the stand. His collar was white against black. His hands were steady as he swore the oath. Howard asked how long he had known the Cole family. Father Tom said 40 years. Since before the children were born. Howard asked about Robert. Father Tom's face changed, softened. He said Robert had been a good man, a devoted husband, a hard worker. He said Robert had died too young. He said his death had left the family in crisis. Howard asked what happened after Robert died. Father Tom said Margaret had held them together. He said she had paid Robert's debts. He said she had kept the house. She had raised the children. He said she had done what Robert could not. She had survived. Howard presented Robert's letter. He asked Father Tom to read it. Father Tom's voice was clear, strong. He read Robert's words about wanting mother cared for properly. He read about Robert's commitment to family, to quality, to doing things right. When he finished, the courtroom was silent. Brennan declined to cross-examine. Father Tom stepped down. He returned to his seat behind me. Howard called me to the stand. The walk felt long. My shoes clicked on the marble floor. I raised my right hand. I swore to tell the truth. Howard asked me to describe my relationship with Mother. I told him. The years of care. The visits. The decisions made in her best interest. I told him about the falls. The medications. The slow decline. I told him I had never taken $1 that was not documented. Never made a decision without thinking of Mother first. Howard asked if I thought I could continue as power of attorney. I said yes, without hesitation. Brennan stood for cross-examination. He asked my age. I said 72. He asked if I had any medical training. I said no, but I had learned. I had asked questions. I had worked with doctors. Brennan asked if I thought Mother would want to stay at an expensive facility if cheaper options existed. I said Mother would want to be somewhere safe. Somewhere she was known. Somewhere with roses. Brennan asked if I was thinking of Mother's needs or my own convenience. The question stung, but I kept my voice steady. I said everything I had done for 8 years had been for Mother. Not for me. Brennan nodded. He thanked me. He sat down. I stepped down from the stand. My legs felt weak. Both sides rested. Judge Henderson said she would issue her ruling in 2 weeks. The gavel came down. The courtroom emptied slowly. People filed out. Voices murmured in the hallway. Derek and Vanessa left without looking at me. Father Tom touched my shoulder. He said I had done well. Linda hugged me. She said she would pray for a good outcome. Howard packed his briefcase. He said 2 weeks would feel long. He said to stay busy. To visit Mother. To keep living. He said whatever happened we had fought with honor. That evening, I drove to Magnolia Gardens. Mother's room was dim. The parking lot lights cast shadows through the window. Mother was asleep in her chair. Her head tilted to one side. I pulled a chair beside her. I sat quietly. After a few minutes her eyes opened. She looked at me. She said my name, Margaret. I took her hand. She asked if the hearing had gone well. The question surprised me. Mother had not known about the hearing. Or I thought she had not. I said it had gone as well as it could. Mother nodded. She squeezed my hand. She said Robert had always trusted me. She said I had never let him down. She said I would not let her down either. Her eyes closed again. Her breathing slowed. I sat with her until the nurses came for evening rounds. Outside the parking lot was nearly empty. Stars filled the sky. The cardinal was perched on a streetlight. Red feathers catching the glow. It watched me walk to my car. It did not fly away. I drove home through empty streets. The house was dark when I arrived. Inside, the journal still sat on the kitchen table. The story of 8 years written in careful script. 2 weeks to wait. 2 weeks to wonder. 2 weeks to remember that some things are worth fighting for. Even when the outcome is uncertain. Even when the cost is high. I turned off the lights. I went to bed. Tomorrow I would visit Mother again. Tomorrow I would keep my promises. Just like I had for 8 years. Just like I would for however many days remained.